good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending where in the world you are. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Monique Sherman. Hi, Head of Marketing here at Automation Hero. If you are in insurance and are wondering how you can benefit from intelligent automation, you've come to the right place. We're incredibly excited to have our customer Ken join us today. We have a lot to talk about. Just some quick introductions, and I actually think that one of our panelists or fireside chat members is running a little late, so we'll maybe need to kind of double back and do some intros when he kicks in. But in the meantime, we'll do some introductions, and Lucas, when he joins, will, again, like I said, let him chime in. But some background on Kin. They're an insurance technology company and home insurance carrier built from the ground up to make insurance easy and affordable. Lucas, you can see his picture. He's the co-founder and CTO, and he spent his career building software, disrupting industries, and creating high-performing teams. He started his career at Accenture and ThoughtWorks, where he was senior consultant and ran IT projects for Fortune 500 clients. He's got a pretty great background. He's also the inventor of Spring Batch, the first and only open source batch processing framework. And then previously, he was CTO of FundSpire, a web-based investment platform that's shaping the next gen of hedge fund investing. And that's also now part of NASDAQ. And also of RippleShot, an award-winning credit card fraud detection platform and venture-backed big data company. He's got a lot of experience here. Kristen, Ben, I'll ask you guys to also turn on your cameras so that these lovely people can see the introductions. Kristen is an associate data scientist at Kin. After graduating from the University of Notre Dame with a BA in economics, she joined Kin as a support consultant and was quickly promoted to junior data analyst on the insurance product team. And that's where she cultivated an interest and expertise in data science and machine learning. She since worked with the engineering team to perform analyses, manage ETL scripts, and create business intelligence and reporting. So she's going to be kind of our technical end user insight here. She's also been integral in shaping Kin's dedicated analytics department. And most recently, she implemented solutions in Automation Hero to make Kin's data operations processes more efficient. So we've got Lucas is going to really kind of talk from the higher level, and Kristen's going to talk from the end user perspective. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Ben Archer, who leads Automation Hero's sales efforts in the Southeast. And he spent a number of years consulting with companies around emerging tech, including AI, automation, and advanced analytics. And he's the recipient of multiple President Club awards. So you guys, thanks so much for joining us. So everybody, we're going to kind of switch things around a little bit. We were going to kick off with Lucas and kind of talk about Kin's overview, you know, kind of why they wanted to get into automation. But we'll kind of swap things around a little bit. But before we kick off, I do want to just kind of go over a few logistics. So we want to make sure we use the most use, of your guys' time. So as I mentioned, please don't hesitate to use the Q&A functionality. You guys should see it at the bottom of your screen. And then we also have a few polls that we're going to share throughout. So I encourage you guys to participate. Really just kind of get a better idea again of how we can help direct conversations in the future and webinars and presentations so that you guys are getting what you need out of it. And this is what we're going to cover today. So a little bit about, you know, why Kin got involved with intelligent automation from a strategic initiative. And then also, you know, with Kristen talking about how the end users experience is developing and implementing a few of their initial use cases. And so Ben, with Lucas here, I'm going to kind of have us kick off a little bit, more with maybe kind of outlining the use cases and how you maybe engage in the conversation first with Kin. And then we'll kind of port into your interaction with Kristen first, because Kristen, you were the point person that was just tapped to kind of jump in and the deep end and see how this all worked. So we'll have you kind of talk a little bit, Kristen, from your understanding of the initiatives. But with that, Ben, why don't you kind of give some background?
Yeah, so thanks, Monique. So I think that when we first started having conversations with Ken, this was about a little over a year ago. I think we ran into Lucas at a trade show and had identified coming out of that some interest in tackling some of their hard to address problems, specifically around handling documents. And in particular, there was one document that Lucas had kind of heralded or held out as his white whale of problems to tackle. And that was really extracting information from what in the insurance or the homeowners insurance space is known as the wind mitigation form, which allows for insurers to validate various issues with the underwriting process or assign risk to the risk of insuring a particular home based upon a number of different factors, in particular associated with wind and wind damage. And so that was kind of a really difficult problem. And so we started down this path of saying, hey, could we do that? And if so, how might we do that to really help Ken accelerate their opportunities to automate that process? And so, we went through a series of kind of POC work where we kind of proved out various parts of the use case. And about midway through that, I think is really where we had folks like Kristen come in and see a much bigger vision for what all Automation Hero could help them address. And so we can certainly talk a little bit more about that. I think Kristen, perhaps maybe the best start here would be just, I know Monique gave a little bit of your background, but if you could just kind of introduce yourself a little bit more and give us a little bit more of your background and kind of prior experience.
Yeah, sure. So as Monique mentioned, I kind of started in a more data analyst focused role at Kin. So I was, just getting comfortable with the data, building reporting, and then kind of as a result of that, got involved in a few more technical data science projects like that. So really when I was coming in, when I was introduced to Automation Hero and in all of our initiatives with them, I was kind of approaching it from a business analyst kind of user. And so it was a really good onboarding process with a quick turnaround for somebody who's has some background in data data science and more advanced data science concepts, but with a majority of my background being on the analyst side of things, it was a very good, easy rollout to get the ball rolling with some more automation oriented projects at Kin.
Cool. So I guess I'm curious to hear a little bit more about what drew you to working with technologies in that automation space, in the artificial intelligence space, coming from kind of that background of being more on the data analyst side.
Yeah. So especially as we started to form our analytics team more, more of our initiatives became using the data to come up with solutions for things in the business. So that's kind of how personally I got interested in doing more on the automation, AI, data science side of things than just analyst stuff. And then simultaneously, Ken had a few projects in mind that we wanted to apply data science, AI, get the ball rolling with some automation of processes. So it was kind of a perfect situation for me, I guess, that Ken was kind of focusing on these initiatives as I was becoming more interested in applying the data and problems that I was noticing in the data and analytics projects, and being able to come up with a solution for those problems through the technology that was becoming more available to us.
Got it.
And I'm going to chime. I'm going to chime in really quick, sorry, because I really am curious about this part, and I'm gonna have you kind of answer a little bit for Lucas since he's not here yet. So I know that we had talked a little bit about Kin's kind of strategic, because I want to pull back a little bit so people get context of where Kin was coming from and how you got started on this. because we probably have a range of people on here, right? People are maybe just starting out and they're a little not really sure where to, and they might be a little bit more advanced, and now they might be already have intelligent automation, something already implemented. You had mentioned that you guys kind of had 5 pillars that you kind of initiated. Can you just talk about that a little bit? And that might help set some context.
Yeah, so as a company, we had kind of passed a lot of our, when I joined Ken, we were still becoming a carrier, a lot more kind of like basic stuff. And now we are more established and we have these kind of broad 5 product or company goals for the year pretty much. And one of those goals is simplifying processes and applying automation to simplify those processes. So that is something that has essentially become a something that like the team that I'm working with to implement these automation hero solutions has really owned that pillar or one of the 5 goals that we have. And then within that, we started talking about automation and data science like a while back, even before we were using Automation Hero. And we had a few specific initiatives in mind that we really saw an opportunity to enhance our business by applying more advanced technology, automation, AI too. So that actually are 3 use cases that we're going through later in this webinar are kind of directly related to those primary goals for automation as well. So good start.
Thanks for that. Sorry, Ben, to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I think just kind of adding into that, Kristen, what was the experience or the level of use of various tools like Automation Hero for both you as well as the organization?
So I personally hadn't used any workflow tools or automation tools or anything like this in a while. A couple years ago when I was first starting as an analyst, we kind of tested out a couple different out of the box AI machine learning platforms, but as I said, that was kind of when we weren't as focused on automation initiatives. We had to direct our like resources and focus towards, starting the carrier and all those things. So now is kind of the stage where we're revisiting technologies like that in my experience. So like the things that we're now doing in Automation Hero, we're through kind of like, we're being done more or less through like manual processes involving a lot of like Google Sheets, a few scheduled looker reports, and a lot of one-off, just like ad hoc analysis that now like with Automation Hero, we're able to kind of centralize and have like organized, defined data around so that we can really use it as a means of advancing our automation and AI initiatives.
So that's obviously really cool that you're able to take a lot of manual processes and bring that into kind of a central place where you can define some automations. You can enable your teams to both build out those flows as well as work with those flows. What was kind of that journey to learn a platform like ours, coming from this very manual process prior to?
Yeah, so for just a little bit of background, we use the like Robin interface a lot. I know we'll talk about that more later. For like the end users in Robin, it's like a very intuitive, good onboarding process as opposed to editing a Google Sheet. And on our end, the onboarding process for using this platform was just like, it was very, very quick, very easy. We had a lot of support from the automation support team, combined with the documentation. Once we kind of saw an example of how to build out a basic flow, I think everybody on our team kind of like got thinking about like all the different things that we can apply this to. And so from there, it was a pretty quick onboarding process. By the time that we had a couple use cases in mind, we were really able to kind of hit the ground running and crank out a flow within a week and have like V1 of a flow and then get users on it, and actually like an automated centralized process in place within probably 2, maybe 3 weeks. So it was great.
That's
a lot of support from
I was gonna say that's pretty incredible to go from zero essentially to within 2 weeks having some stuff built out. That's obviously a testament to you and the rest of the team, and just your willingness to dive right in. I guess I'm curious, what were the benefits that you started to see from that process?
The benefits that we started to see immediately, I suppose, were just, it was very straightforward. We were thinking that like analysts and people that didn't necessarily identify as data scientists could easily implement these solutions. So that kind of opened our mind to what kinds of solutions we could use Automation Hero for, and just broadened our use case of it. So that was a huge benefit. And then it was very easy to integrate to our existing data sources. So like the SQL connection was very easy, and since a lot of our analysts are more comfortable with SQL, it was really easy to not necessarily have to learn a new language or any like kind of coding or anything. We just kind of had to be like, oh, this is where we plug in the SQL, and this is how we kind of clean it a little bit and get it formatted into the process that we want. So it was good.
Very cool. So it looks like we were able to get Lucas on here. Lucas, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, sorry, I'm late.
No worries.
No worries.
So maybe just to take a couple of steps back, Lucas, would you mind just kind of giving a little bit of background as to kind of who you are and what your background is, and then maybe what led you to founding Ken?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer of Ken. As Ben mentioned, I started the company with Sean about 5 years ago. My background, really quick, has actually always been in sort of this realm. I worked at Accenture for 5 years, and I got lucky because I ended up writing an open source framework around batch processing called Spring Batch, really designed to process like billions of records overnight. So very similar to what you need to do on the machine learning side. And after that, I worked for ThoughtWorks. I did a bunch of cool stuff there, and in startup land. So I was CTO of a hedge fund analytics business. I was also the co-founder and CTO of a machine learning company. Excuse me, a machine learning company that that was using similar techniques to solve credit card fraud detection. Before I went on and started Ken, and Sean and I. The thing that we liked the most, I think, that got us moving that way, we knew at a point in our career we wanted to do something very big and very impactful, and we saw the home insurance space where we're an actual property insurance carrier. We have a full-on carrier. We're not an MGA, and we sell property insurance direct to consumers currently in Florida, California, and Louisiana. We saw the opportunity in that space because of, and I think the way that it probably particularly ties in here. We've worked in fintech for a long time. We've worked in regulated industries, so we weren't scared about the regulations. And we've seen the same pattern kind of go over where like payments, where there was sort of payment brokers and there was manual kind of inefficient underwriting processes. And we saw the same kind of thing in property insurance, where it was still 94% sold through brokers who took a percentage every time. So you kind of think of a plan where, hey, we played this before. We know to automate underwriting. And that's what we did. So we went direct to consumers and then automated the underwriting. And obviously Kristin's been talking about some of the ways that we do that with Automation Heroes support, and there's many other things, tricks to that as well.
Yeah, certainly agree with you there. That there's a lot of ways to tackle that. I guess from a business priority standpoint, what were some of the key things in automating the underwriting process that you were looking to achieve, and then maybe to tack onto that, what were some of the decision criteria when you started looking at build versus buy, and when you went to go buy, what were the differentiators that you really were trying to tackle?
Yeah, so I probably have talked to every AI company that's existed at this point that's kind of come through, and I've done a lot of machine learning in the past. And I've learned a few lessons. One, I think most people think the model is the most important thing, and I'll be controversial and say that I'm not sure that it is. I mean, everybody knows the adage, garbage in, garbage out, and that's true. It's about the data, but a lot of it is about the flywheel, because a lot of it is about how you operationalize the data, the model and the outputs of the model, and how that actually impacts your business. I think a lot of people, it's really easy to create a model that shows these results and like, cool, but what do you do with that? Like, well, how does that actually do anything for your business? And so, you see a lot of things, and I've looked at a lot of places where they're just kind of hosting models and things. And I'm like, well, that's not, I can have a data scientist build a model on their machine, right, if they need to. But the big thing is then, how do I keep getting data into it? So to me, it's sort of this flywheel of how do I keep iterating on this process of like the data coming in and what it can tell me from a model, and then what I can do to operationalize that. Well, okay, that's not good enough to move the needle. And the other problem is people want to be able to put in a machine learning model and it just immediately have ROI. And I just think that's unrealistic. Because instead you need to kind of get it out there and be able to iterate on it, right? And be able to, because like the model's going to come out and it's not going to have values that change things. And then you've got to be disciplined, put in more research. What's the data that I have? What can I exclude from the data coming into the model? What's some things I can do to enrich the data coming out of the model? What are some things that I can do? And obviously what we've done is you're almost always going to have to put humans in the middle of the process at some point, because there's no model that's going to be so good that it's just going to be completely free of it. And you're going to have to sort of, add things or add conclusions that can make it more, useful on the operational side, right? So there's, so if I was to step back and look at something, even if I was to use just an AI system that was just hosted out there, I would still need to write a lot of developer time writing code to like get stuff in there, or I'd end up with a data scientist that's just pushing stuff on their local machine, and I don't know where they got the data from. And then when the outputs come in, like there's a lot of things that you're gonna have to do to make the data fit. And either I've got to write that into my system, and then when I need to iterate on it, I've got to write a full dev ticket, and I've got to go through the process. And again, getting machine learning to like give you ROI is all about, is iterating quickly. So I think what initially drew me to Automation Hero was sort of the combination of things of, hey, they have a no-code platform to get data into the models and get it back out of, which means I can iterate fast, because I need to learn the lessons quicker and not have to have a full dev cycle to get there. Apologies. Secondly, the sort of the Robin interface, which allowed us to effectively put a human in the middle, also again without having to build a bunch of our code, because I could take a no-code platform, do what I needed to do, and then I'd have to write code to hook it in. It's just a really big a big process to get to the output. So I think what initially intrigued me about doing the pilot was that I could do all of that in one thing and have a really quick cycle. And I think that's, I think earlier when you were talking to Kristin about how quickly we created stuff, it's because, yeah, once we had the quick feedback loops in, we could just keep creating stuff and adding them. Yeah, I know, long-winded answer, but I guess that's the point of this thing, right?
So yeah, so it sounds like a lot of the value is certainly in terms of operationalizing what you're trying to do with AI, but then also, how do you loop a human into that mix? Because inevitably you're going to need to have some sort of human validation, maybe even augmentation, and so how do you loop them into that kind of end-to-end process that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is we end up having humans checking those humans, so we have data on the accuracy of the humans that are checking the fake humans, I guess, the robots.
That's how you improve. Is it okay if I'm just going to chime in with a question, Lucas, because you have an interesting perspective on this, because you're basically coming at it from both business perspective, since you're, co-founder and CTO, but also you have a very strong technical background. And I'm wondering, for the people on the call here, who do you think needs to be kind of a part of these conversations when you're thinking about introducing automation? If they are not maybe as technically inclined as you, who kind of do you think should be help supporting these decisions of rolling out automation and really making it a strategic initiative?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the part of the business. Apologies, my alarm went off. I think it depends on the part of the business. So I think when you talk about Kin, there's kind of two people heavily involved. One of them is Angel Conlon, who's our chief insurance officer, because so much of this stuff is related to underwriting, and she's really got to sign off, like, what can we automate, and she's the ultimate decider on those types of things. If I was to move more into the claims realm, it would be my head of claims. Clay Rising would be the person I'd pull in, and right now our VP of Ops, Brian Pogrund, is pulled in. So I think this goes back to my point of you have to operationalize it, and if you don't have those people pulled in, it's just like any kind of standard product initiative, right? If I'm not talking to people that are actually going to use a thing, I'm very likely to build something different than what they need. You go through all this effort, you build it, and they're like, nope, that's not going to help me. So if I don't have a tight relationship with that, it's just not going to work. I think it's just a little bit different here because you have to have some coaching around the thing that I just said here, which is like, I'm not going to get you an output that immediately moves this needle. Like, I need to set expectations about this process. And I gotta create a vision for what the end could be and keep you aligned on that vision, which is still, like, you do that with a lot of product work. As a technologist, I'm used to having to tell business people to be patient. But it's a little bit more extreme here because people just don't understand this stuff. And it's sold as like magic, and it's not really that magical. And I mean, what's the old joke? AI is for PowerPoint, machine learning is for Python. Isn't that I think that's it.
That's a technologist joke right there. No, that's really helpful, because I was saying a little bit earlier, I think there's kind of a span of people who are joining us today, right? Some people probably are just getting started on their automation journey. Some people maybe have done some research, and some, are maybe have had a little bit of experience implementing. But kind of if you're just getting started, what do you need to be thinking of? Sorry, Ben, to interrupt.
No, you're perfectly fine. So, it sounds like that one of the big benefits, just both, building off of Lucas, your comments, as well as Kristen, going back to some of what you were talking about, taking a lot of manual processes and leveraging Robin in the workflows for that human component. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about, what some of those benefits are that you've seen? I guess, Lucas, I'm curious to hear from your kind of top level perspective, but then also Kristen, kind of from the enabling those humans that are in the loop, what some of those tangible benefits have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting accurate data is the most important thing that we can do. And we have a lot of different things that we do, of which Automation Hero is an important part. Because that ultimately, if I step back for a second, part of the reason property insurance was done kind of slower or later than auto, because auto insurance has had this direct model for quite some time, and Geico and Progressive both do this. But if I think about it for a second, I just need a credit score, like, so that, and I basically need to pull your driving record, your credit history, and you can tell me what car yours is. And I know if you just tell me your car, I know everything about it. Whereas a home is a completely bespoke thing. Like some person just built it. Like, I mean, I guess there's blueprints or stuff, but it's actually, you have no idea. And a lot of times customers themselves don't actually know, either because they're buying the home or because, like, you ask them what your home made of and they say brick. And it's like, well, actually that's a brick veneer and it's just frame behind there. Like, how would they know that? And a lot of these things have pretty big implications as to how you price and underwrite, home, because you need to know how it's constructed. And so obviously we do a lot of things to try and find, data sources. And I think when those things break down, is when we start applying, we apply modeling to things already, but being able to have the humans. And I think if memory serves, we're able to get an answer back on a single field, at least in some of the important ones, in like 2 minutes, just because we've been able to build very tight loops on data fields with folks that are doing the manual verification. And so in being able to do that in that world is is a very powerful thing. And that's where I think a lot of the impact's been. Plus, I think there's a lot of other automation we'd be able to do that I don't think we had thought of. And some of that is just using the tool, but it was a little bit of a benefit where there's things like verifying documents. And there's a lot of these tasks that go on that are just really inefficient. And we've been able to sort of pick those up with the platform, even though I wouldn't call those like the traditional machine learning, but because we had that there and we already had the system, there was just a lot of, hey, we can use this as an automation tool separate from whether or not we're hooking in a model or something. And that I think would probably be in the unexpected benefit category, because I had been thinking of it traditionally in when the model is below this accuracy, I have a human do this thing, and didn't think of it like, I don't know, it's a no-code platform with a tool I can configure to do a flow like this. And that's been an unexpected surprise that's been very good.
Very cool. So Kristen, yeah, I'm curious from your perspective, because I know you're more into the weeds of constructing these automations and then enabling those humans in the loop. And you came from that very manual process on the one hand, all the way over to now it's there's a lot of automation there, certainly still humans that are looped in.
Yeah, I think to Lucas's point, having the humans in the middle just gives us more confidence in the accuracy of the data for when we do move forward with automating or developing like the machine learning models, both in the sense that we have defined data labeling, as well as the sense of getting kind of the ops organization's trust and buy-in to the automation platform. And to Lucas's point, we have to be in like close communication with Angel and the insurance and underwriting team. So having this defined data that we can base future automated underwriting, we can have this as like a basis for that. Is really important, I think, in moving forward with that visibility into automated processes that are so kind of important to certain elements of the organization. So, and then an unexpected benefit, to Lucas's point, yeah, being able to like iterate on so many different use cases beyond just the traditional machine learning AI model development, and really implement a lot more smaller but like very impactful automated processes is extremely helpful. So.
Very cool. So maybe now would be a good time to transition over and just talk through some of the use cases. I think Monique's going to pull up a couple of slides for some use cases that have been developed. And Kristen, I guess it'd be interesting to have you just walk us through a little bit of what the before and after was, just to set some perspective.
Yeah, let's see. Are you guys seeing the right slide?
Yep.
Use cases? Okay, good. Sometimes you never know. Yeah, so Kristen, let's go ahead and kick off. We have a few use cases here if you want to walk through kind of what this looks like. And this is obviously the automated version, right? So this was a little bit more, a lot more complex before, but just to kind of give people a sense of what this looks like. And if you wouldn't mind spending, because we've talked a lot about Robin, and maybe just to give some context of that's Automation Hero's way of delivering automations for this feedback loop. We call it our personal automation assistant because it actually delivers, and then you get to say like, yes, this is correct, or no, we need to change things. If you wouldn't mind spending some time on that, just so people get a clear understanding of what we've been referencing, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So I think this is something that Lucas and Ben mentioned. Having this wind mitigation form automation was kind of like one of our initial concepts of how we can leverage automation, AI, machine learning to improve our processes. Wind mitigation forms have a very significant impact on the premium of a home insurance policy. So it's very important that the data on the form is input accurately so that the customer gets the appropriate discounts and maybe doesn't get too many discounts, creating like a confusing customer experience. So wind mitigation forms are also, as you can maybe imagine, just a very defined form. They all look exactly the same in the state of Florida. And so it was like a very kind of exciting use case to be able to implement automation and maybe apply some intelligent OCR modeling to, so that we can extract data and ensure the accuracy. So just to walk through this, as you can see, the file system serves as our input for this. We just pull, there's an S3 connection in Automation Hero, so we're able to pull from the file path where the wind mitigation forms are stored once they're uploaded by either the customer in their customer portal or the agent directly in our application. And so once we pull the file, we're able to run it through this model that Automation Hero kind of developed for us. And that is able to extract the data from the form with a level of confidence, essentially, an alignment score, and scores for each of the data fields that we expect to be able to extract from this mitigation form. So that's super helpful, especially because I'm sure in your experience, when you get documents from clients, they can come in like forms of weird kind of like screenshots, JPEGs, or like the actual PDF or just pictures of a file. So having those scores and having something that's able to extract data from kind of anything is super exciting. So once we are able to extract the data, the next point is data enrichment. So we connect to our SQL database and add information about the customer, property, all those things that a human validator might need to consider. And for us to be able to have data and kind of analysis additionally on the back end when we're analyzing this process. So then it's sent to the human validator we have certain thresholds of comfort based on the alignment scores and for the individual fields and the whole document itself to know whether it's something that we really need a human to validate or if it's something that we're pretty confident in. And so we started by sending all documents through the human validation to determine that threshold. And we'll slowly work to develop and get more automation and less need for the human validator. But also, as I said earlier, having that Robin user validating, reviewing the document just uploads right into the Robin task, as well as drop-down fields for them to verify all the different fields that we need to confirm. So just having them do that helps with our buy-in from the operations organization. This is previously a process that sales agents were spending a lot of time on, and since it had such a high impact, they were spending a lot of time and detail going through verifying these. So our whole kind of idea with automating this process is that we could take this kind of worry out of the hands of the sales agent so they don't have to worry about it. And we can just take care of making sure the data is accurate. So then we read the output of the Robin tasks that the human validation has validated. And we are actually able to connect to a REST API in our web app directly, where we can populate the correct values into our app so we can get an accurate quote for the customer within however long this process takes, which is under an hour, which is a big lift for us operationally. and from a data perspective, because we actually have data on these wind mitigation forms that we are confident in, which ties into the database, right? So we can, as I said, analyze these results, have that data, and then we'll also send an outbound email once we verify the document to either support or the sales agent so that they can communicate with the customer accordingly. So
that's
pretty much that one.
yeah, that sounds pretty incredible. There's I think a couple of things that stick out to me is, number one, this process was done by sales reps, right? Which obviously, if they're spending their time doing this, they're not spending their time doing what they've essentially been hired to do, which is go and drive additional revenue. And so you've been able to alleviate some of this manual work from them, while also speeding up the process to get that underwriting process taken care of to provide a quote, and hopefully then close the customer. So that's really incredible. In terms of the human validation component, I'm curious, can you speak to like how long that used to take and perhaps how quickly that takes now?
Sure. So the big advantage of this, in terms of efficiency, is that we run this flow every 2 minutes. We could run it more frequently, but we're seeing a satisfactory SLA at the 2-minute frequency. So every 2 minutes, we just pull a file directly from the system, rather than it having to be a part of like an agent checklist or support task list that maybe they don't get to it for not like as immediately as 2 minutes from file upload. So maybe the same day, next business day, depending on the workflow of the agents and support representatives. And then I would say like this process for any form coming in can now kind of be confidently completed and verified within an hour, usually less than that, usually around 20 to 30 minutes. Whereas before we didn't have like necessarily the automation around it, and had to kind of rely on individual manual processes. And in addition to that, I'd say like definitely the biggest lift is just taking more of the data validation out of the hands of the sales reps so they can, focus on driving revenue rather than, worrying about all this data validation and stuff that we can take care of.
Very cool.
Lucas, actually, you had mentioned one of our pre-calls, kind of how this helps impact the team, right? And more, maybe morale wasn't your word, that might be my word, but attrition and kind of letting people focus on other kind of activities. This might be kind of a time to chime in and maybe give your perspective on that and how that's helped you guys.
Well, yeah, I mean, these are big, long, complicated forms that you have to fill out. It's a very, very used form in the Florida marketplace because it basically speaks to the hurricane resistance of your home and can mean thousands of dollars of savings to the customer. But it's a very long, complicated form, and you have there's a lot of translation and stuff that aren't fun. And we did a few different tricks to try and do that, but it's just entering a big, long form. And you've got to do it to get an accurate quote for every customer you talk to, and that's not fun if you're a sales rep that's trying to close as much business as possible, or it ends up being a CS task. So yeah, it's not fun. I think everybody, I feel like everybody gets the like benefit of OCR though, right? Like and data entry, just I don't think anybody's gonna be like, I'm going home and having a relaxing weekend doing data entry. I've never heard that before.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. It's like giving me flashbacks of my years younger, like doing a lot of data entry, and it was painful.
I did it in college for FedEx Freight. I entered and I had to enter in the actual like weight as it went onto the truck and stuff. Yeah.
No wonder, why you became a technologist, so you could figure out problems to that, right? Awesome, thank you. We have a few more use cases to go over. I think it's just helpful for everybody to kind of see the progression that Ken went through. So maybe just, Kristen, if you wouldn't mind kind of just giving a brief overview of these. I think we've got 3 more coming up, but kind of do you have an idea of, it's kind of like the simplified process, or kind of, what it was before and what it is now?
Yeah, for sure. So as Lucas and I both kind of touched on earlier, we had a certain idea of automating underwriting by kind of piece by piece. And so one of the ways that we wanted to automate underwriting is through kind of how Lucas mentioned earlier, validating our external data sources that we use to verify those details about the property, such as, is it a frame construction? Is it masonry veneer? Or is it brick? All this stuff. So this is kind of like the human, we have some confidence interval modeling based on certain data sources by property attribute. For example, the roof material and construction type, construction material. So this process, this property attributes use case, is really to put a human in the middle for validating both the confidence intervals that we have developed and enhancing them more moving forward, as well as providing that kind of last check before the final quote, again, so we can take some of the concern off of the agent of validating these kind of like minute or not minute, they're very significant, but as an agent, it's kind of difficult and time consuming to validate these. So we can take it off their hand, and this is what Lucas mentioned earlier. We can have certain attributes on a property verified within 2 minutes of the customer actually entering their property information. Sometimes faster, sometimes more like 10 minutes, but either way, it's very, very helpful to both of our ops organization, as well as enhancing this initiative to automate property attributes and underwriting in that regard. So this one is a pretty simple implementation. We just read from our production database, and we just pull in the most recently created records. We pull our internal confidence score, and based on that, we filter we prioritize what tasks need to be validated by the Robin user, and then they validate the data. We do some additional data enrichment just so we can have an understanding of the accuracy of the data coming in, and an idea of how much certain things are changed, which property attributes change, all that stuff. And then we do the database right for that analysis, and similar to the windstorm mitigation use case, we have REST API posts to our web apps, so that quote can be updated and accurate within 10 minutes. So
nice,
kind of a lot,
awesome. Thanks for walking through. No,
big
yeah,
use
no,
case for us.
that's helpful. Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So we're not gonna walk through document classification and verification. It's kind of the same idea, in terms of how you still have the human validation component in here. But I do want to jump to the lead scoring, because this is a work in progress. So I guess just context, this one we're also in process, or we've implemented with Kin. But this one I think will be interesting because this is a totally different department. This is with your, it's marketing kind of, right? Marketing and sales combined. So I'd be curious, I think this is maybe a little bit dramatic, inspiring for the people on the call or on the webinar who, maybe haven't thought of other departments that could also use this. And I think it's a good testament to show how intelligent automation can be rolled out across organizations, starting with a use case for one team, but then really kind of taking a broader perspective of it.
Yeah, for sure. So lead scoring has been a focus that we have wanted to get some automation. This is where we actually do want to implement some machine learning. So we've had more technical data scientists working on this as well. In combination with marketing, we get data leads, and we want to be able to attribute a score so we can understand, maybe get an idea of the long-term value of the or lifetime value of the customer, and use the data that we have on claims and sales conversion, marketing conversion, to see the likelihood that somebody will convert with us and is a customer that could be long lasting, have good lifetime value. So this is both exciting to see. To Lucas's earlier point, a priority in finding this automation platform was deployability. So this is a very, we've had a data scientist working on this for a bit now, and he's been able to iterate on it based on changing data sources and data formatting and stuff like that. So he's able to iterate on it, and then we'll still be able to, we're still able to write to the database so we can perform analysis, model validation, all of that, as well as eventually with the REST endpoint that we're able to hit from Automation Hero, we'll be able to kind of process a request and send it back to our web application. So sales agents, support agents, marketing are all aware of kind of the lead score for the incoming customer.
Awesome. That's really helpful. I appreciate you walking through those. And I think, kind of thing is, a lot of companies might, they're looking for the crawl, walk, run scenario. You guys kind of crawled, you started running basically. So I want to jump into the Q&A. We have a few minutes left, and I had a number of questions that cropped in or cropped up. But I think one of the ones that I've seen kind of repeated is, you guys clearly had an investment in data science early on. I mean, obviously, Lucas, you're a tech founder, so that kind of probably has a component to it. But for companies that maybe don't have a data science team, or are kind of still thinking about how the technical side should be run, do you guys have any advice? Because not everybody is able to invest at where they are, right, in such a core team that you guys rely on.
That is an interesting question, because my gut says decide to invest, because I think if you under-resource this, you're going to end up not, I mean, you're not setting it up for success. So I think you do have to think about, a lot of times people will have like, oh, I have a data scientist and maybe they're more junior and I'll just hand this to them. And then they're not able to get these things across, whether it's because they don't have programmer support or they don't have other things. So, you can always use contractors or other people. You can always stand up, you can find some way to get external people to like carve off a piece and get stuff moving if you don't have resources. But I guess my personal opinion is that you do have to decide to invest the people and things in it to return the benefit. I think it does help with this platform, and I think it's less than in many other cases, because we have a lot of people that aren't developers that are using it to build out stuff. But without that amount of sort of developer knowledge and know-how, it's going to be tough to build these complicated systems. Hopefully that was a good answer.
Kristen, I'd be curious from your perspective, coming really from an economics background and then kind of building your way up to where you are right now. And I'll do a shameless plug of Automation Hero here. What kind of has been your experience working with a tool or a platform, I should say, like Automation Hero? And maybe this was part of the buying consideration. As a data scientist, how kind of are you leveraging the platform? And if you didn't have something that was point and click, low code, what do you think that would have looked like for you?
Yeah, so I think the point and click is super helpful just for having buy-in across the different teams. It's super helpful for visibility and understanding, as opposed to having like building out like a GitHub repo process around like a sort of coding alternative. It's just like a little less visible, a little less approachable for the product team. And additionally, like for me, similar to what Lucas said, we do need to interact with the development team to get those REST APIs up and coordinate with them on that. So having the point and click aspect for that was helpful for me, because a developer can just kind of like go in and create the output for me of what we need, what they're expecting, and it's just easy to work like cross-functionally across the different teams, both from the underwriters who use the Robin platform to Angel, who goes in and kind of like develops an understanding of how we're using it, to me and onboarding like additional analysts and engineers to help build out these processes is just all a lot easier. I think the point and click was what enabled us to hit the ground running with multiple use cases in a short amount of time. And we can still, one of our data scientists, John, still does use Python and everything, and is able to kind of iterate on the models and translate his Python models into this Automation Hero environment through flexibilities with Docker and working closely with the Automation Hero data science and support team. So it's a pretty flexible platform in that regard for us.
Awesome, thank you. I know we're a little bit over. I just have one more question I really wanted to get to. So thanks for hanging in there for you. Everybody's still on the line. I think this is really important. This kind of gets back to how do people get started. Lucas, you guys had a use case wind mitigation specifically kind of in mind that you wanted to start with. How important do you think it is to have a use case in mind before you get started? Or is it something that can kind of like, I want automation, and then you just, kind of kick off and then discover a use case? And then you might have some insight on this, because I know you've talked to a lot of companies, at different stages.
I mean, just because I'm so big on operationalizing it, if you don't have a use case, then don't do it. I don't think you should stick to that use case if you start going down that path and find there's a better use case for things, though. I think you should allow for that, but I think you should figure out a use case and run towards it, just because it's really easy to seem like it's shiny and nice, but I think you really kind of need to be dialed in on where you want to apply it for it to be successful. And I'm just, both from a consulting background, granted there was machine learning when I was doing it, but having implemented it, having run a machine learning company, that I've just seen so many people with like, we tried this thing and it never worked and it never got off the ground. And we had a couple things we tried before that didn't work either. And probably part of it was that I didn't have the solid use case. Although I did have the windstorm one, but that one's got its own little quirks to it. But yeah, find the use case.
Yeah, I'll follow with the wise words from Lucas. Right, it's about finding a use case. I think that if you can identify a use case early, and here at Automation Hero, we do have some tools to help kind of walk you through identification of use cases. So we do some workshops with clients today to help kind of identify that. But if you don't have a use case, then you're maybe setting yourself up for some disaster early on, or a bad experience early on. So finding that use case, and then kind of to Lucas's second comment, is be okay with changing the use case that you initially went with. Should you find something that's maybe high value and easy to implement, go ahead and be comfortable with delaying the initial use case in favor of something else that's identified. And I think that was kind of the use case, or the approach that Ken took, where we started with this wind mitigation, which was pretty complex, but there was some low-hanging fruit that was identified by the team, leveraging Robin, that virtual assistant, to really get them some additional quick wins, especially across the organization, while we still worked kind of on the side against the wind mitigation use case. So be comfortable with that transition there.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and I know we're a little bit over, so I do appreciate everyone for staying on. Kristen, Lucas, thank you guys so much for joining. Really appreciate your time here and sharing your story. Everyone have a great rest of your day wherever you are. And as always, you can always reach out to hi@automationhero.ai if you guys have any questions or want to talk through use cases. And with that, we will sign off, everyone.